Okay, let's get started. Welcome everyone. I think folks are trickling in. Uh, Welcome to the very first ever post-secondary access and attainment impact group webinar hosted with GFE. My name is Jonathan Reed. I'm a program officer uh, over at ECMC Foundation, as well as co-chair of the PSA2 impact group, along with my dear colleagues, Jenny Achilles, as well as Robin Adabir Ellis. We're excited to kick off this year's PSA2 webinar series. And during this session, we'll share innovative peer-to-peer advising model and some considerations for funders to support cost-effective advising. So I'll go over some brief introductions, then it'll be an overview of the issue and an approach. We'll hear from Cara and Queens College. Afterward, you'll have a chance to hear directly from the practitioners themselves, those doing the work on the ground. And then we'll end with some considerations for funders. Great, so I'm joined today by some awesome people. Lori Chaget, co-director of Cara, Laura Silverman, director of academic advising over at Queens College, Rebecca De Jesus, associate director of freshman onboarding and advising services over at Queens College. And you're all in as for a special treat today. We have be elevating the student voice with the peer advisor, Selena Singh, as well. Next slide, please. Great. So ECMC Foundation, I'm sure many of you may already know, but if not, we're a national foundation focused exclusively on post-secondary student success. And our North Star goal was brand new, hot off the presses. And our North Star goal is to eliminate post-equity gaps in post-secondary completion by 2040. And I invite you all to visit our website to learn more. We're a project-based funder, and we focus on systemic change with 3 strategic priorities. The first is removing barriers to post-secondary completion. The second is building the capacity of organizations and institutions, as well as third, transforming the post-secondary ecosystem so that this ecosystem, post-secondary student success and support, is affordable, accessible, as well as student-centered.
As Jonathan said, I am Lori Chaget, co-director of CARA, College Access Research and Action. We are located in New York City. Our mission is to ensure that first-generation students, students from low-income communities, and students of color have the knowledge and support they need to enroll in and persist through post-secondary education. We work to address the guidance gap that exists in under-resourced public institutions that makes it challenging to provide students with the opportunities and the supports that they need to define and realize their post-secondary goals and dreams. We focus on institutional capacity building, working at the institutional level with the goal of moving access and persistence guidance from a model that is enrichment for some to one that is a right for all, making sure that all students in public institutions get those supports. One of our core programs is a peer-to-peer advising model, which works across access and persistence, which you will be hearing about today. We also do research on and with our programs to inform the field and to push policy at a systems level towards greater equity.
Good afternoon, I'm Laura Silverman. I direct the Academic Advising Center at Queens College. I am pleased to be here today to represent the peer program at Queens College. Queens College is part of CUNY, which is the nation's largest public university system, reflective of the population of the city of New York. Through its 25 colleges across 5 boroughs, it offers broad and transformative access to public education. CUNY enrolls more than 225 degree-seeking students of all ages and awards 50,000 degrees annually. As the data show, a significant number of CUNY students are low-income students and students of color. This is in accord with the university's mission of providing a first-rate education to all students, regardless of means or background. Queens College is a microcosm of CUNY, located in the world's most diverse borough. As a senior college, it offers bachelor's and master's degrees, as well as programs that lead to the doctoral degree in conjunction with the CUNY Graduate Center. We enroll approximately 18,000 students, 85% of whom are undergraduates. Its reputation as an institution of academic excellence with world-class faculty, however, without the price tag, has ensured that our students graduate with zero to low debt load. Next slide. While a public university system such as ours is an engine of social and economic upward mobility, there can be guidance and support gaps for students. Student acclimation and curriculum navigation is more challenging than ever, particularly post-pandemic. The stakes are high in ensuring students reach their personal and academic goals while meeting criteria for continued financial aid. From an advising perspective, including academic advising, faculty advising and mentoring, and career advising, this is where inequities in student support are most apparent. While advising ratios within special opportunity and enrichment programs at CUNY and QC are more akin to the ratios at private institutions, academic advising ratios for the general student population can be as high as 1 to 1,000. Some of the special programs have additional built-in support services such as tutoring and career advisement, while general population career advisement can be as high as 1 to 2 career advisors for over 10,000 students. Next slide. Indeed, there are many wonderful programs out there that address this issue for students. Many are located outside of the institutions of higher education and work with select students within them. We are focused today on initiatives that happen within colleges as part of their overall structure. Within CUNY, for example, there are some fantastic high-touch programs, including ASAP, ACE, Honors, SEEK, and others. And we would love for nothing more than for all of our students to experience the support that these programs provide, but they are costly and the funding is just not there for all. Then there are low-cost actions, especially with the expansion of accessible technologies, such as text nudges, but research shows that they do not have as much of an impact. Next slide.
Thanks, Laura. As Laura just explained, CUNY, which is really representative of broad access public institutions nationwide, is caught between deep, high-touch programming for some students and lower touch for all. At Cara, we are working with a range of partners to add a layer of relational support at a campus level to all students who are not in those specialized programs that give them that extra support. Together, we're working to scale a peer-to-peer model with 3 explicit goals. 1, to narrow the guidance gap by augmenting existing advising resources with trained peer advisors who are students to support other students not in special programs to enroll and persist through college. 2, to provide meaningful career development to college students who serve as paid peer advisors, helping them to narrow the career advisement and development gap that Laura just explained is so hard to get at broad access institutions. And 3, to establish a framework for institutionalization and scalability. This is not easy work. It is really, really hard. But through our partnerships with CUNY and the Foundation for Tacoma Students working across 6 different campuses, we're seeing firsthand the power of the model in meeting students' many and varied needs. And we're also seeing the challenges we need to address to successfully scale it. It's really important to note that this work is being funded by a host of foundations between our work with CUNY and Foundation for Tacoma Students, because it takes this kind of collaborative effort to work at this scale. We are so grateful to every funder that is putting resources and faith into the power of peer-to-peer approach. And we are also grateful to Grantmakers for Education for hosting this to profile the work. Next slide. We wanted to give you a snapshot of what it looks like to build towards the kind of scale that we're talking about within a public system. Focusing on our work at CUNY with first-year students, and specifically our work at Queens College with that population. Over the past 3 years, we've increased our reach considerably. At CUNY writ large, we've gone from 2 campuses to 4, 2 campuses in our pilot year to 4 now. We've more than 2.5 times the number of students served, reaching an increasing percent of eligible students on each campus as we've gone. And we've almost doubled the number of trained and paid peer advisors. At Queens College specifically, you can see how they began serving 325 students in the first semester. They decided to intentionally keep the program small in order to work through the expected challenges of implementation, especially during a pandemic when CUNY was still 100% or close to 100% remote in its programming. And then moving to increase the numbers of students served. This year, Queens College's program is serving 69% of all eligible students. Next slide. This work, of course, is not just about serving more students over time. It's about implementing a model with fidelity. And so together with our partners, we've been working to cultivate the following 5 components that Cara has found are critical to best practice programs. The first is to provide comprehensive and continuous training. Programs need to thoroughly prepare students for this role with training that enables them to do very complex work with students. 2, programs need to ensure competitive pay and stable employment. I think it goes without saying, but in order for students from low-income communities to work in these programs, they need to pay well, and that means above minimum wage, and they need to move past micro internships or short-term ones, because without that, students are going to opt for hourly retail and service jobs instead of jobs like this. 3, programs need to provide strong site-based supervision. Even when well-trained, programs cannot throw students in alone to do the work. They need ongoing supervision from a professional who is qualified to support them. 4, the work needs to be proactive, relational, and ongoing. This can happen by housing peer advisors inside of college advising and student support offices, assigning them a steady group of students to support over the course of an entire year, and using shared data tracking systems so that the work can be really a distributed model. Finally, peer advisors need to be working within their own communities. When colleges hire students who attend their institution, those peer advisors are credible messengers. They've traversed similar pathways to the students they work with, confronted similar challenges, and navigated shared emotions. This structure also ensures that students who typically have the least access to paid, robust work-based learning and internship experiences will get them. Next slide. When campuses are able to implement this model with fidelity, and ideally at scale, we see 3 important impacts that help to address issues of equity in post-secondary education. First, students at under-resourced campuses benefit from the support they get to help navigate the complexity of college and help them to establish a greater sense of belonging, which we know is incredibly important to persistence. 2, peer advisors benefit from best practice career development while earning needed income to stay in college. And the third impact is that public colleges benefit from added capacity through a cost-effective program. They also get a built-in system to gather student feedback on their policies and practices, and they benefit from a talent pipeline that can help them to fill advising roles in the future.
Great. Lori and Laura, I really appreciate the framing here. I think that certainly sets the groundwork. And now I'd like to transition us to a moderator panel so folks on the call can learn a little bit more about just how this work is done on a college campus. So we'll spend the next 25, 30 minutes or so going over how this model expands advising capacity at the institutional level and really contextualize the challenges and resources needed to really pull this thing off. But before we just dive in, let's go ahead and just do some quick, brief introductions. We'll keep them to about a minute. and we'll go down the line. And I'll toss it out there. Would you mind describing your role within or relationship to peer-to-peer post-secondary advising? Laura, we'll start off with you. Then we'll go to Rebecca and then Selena.
Thank you, Jonathan. As director of the Advisement Center at Queens College, I have the pleasure of overseeing the many activities and initiatives of the Advising Center, which is an integrated and continuous student service model. So what that means is that we support the general student population, those who are not affiliated with special programs, throughout their life cycle as undergraduates. We work with these students, the general population students, from onboarding through to graduation. Within our portfolio of student support services are the freshman and transfer peer mentoring programs.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rebecca De Jesus. I serve as the Associate Director of Freshman Onboarding and Advising Services in the Academic Advising Center at Queens College, City University of New York. My role is multifaceted, and one of the key aspects involves overseeing the administration and implementation of our peer advising program. I work in close collaboration with the program supervisor, colleagues, and stakeholders as we strive to maximize the impact of our peer program in supporting student success.
Hello, everyone. It's an honor to be here today. I'm Selena Singh. I'm a first generation college student, and I'm a current senior at Queens College, expecting to get my bachelor's in psychology this May. I've been working as a peer advisor for 4 years now and have recently been promoted to a peer coordinator role. In my role, I support freshmen and transfer students, as well as other peer advisors. In addition, I also help to train new peers.
Hi, as noted, I am Lori Chaget, co-director of CARA, College Access Research and Action. We have been developing and seeding a peer-to-peer model since our very beginning in 2011. It's worth noting that the roots of our peer-to-peer model started with young people themselves, high school students, who demanded that their high schools do more to support them through the post-secondary planning process, and helped to develop a peer-to-peer model at that level that we have taken and developed within access and persistent spaces.
That's great. Thank you all for the quick introductions. Let's jump right into the questions. So in order to best understand, from the panel, how this model expands advising capacity, I just have a couple of questions for you all. Selena, I'm looking at your square here. What have you done through as your role as a peer advisor that you think has helped students navigate through Queens College?
It's a wonderful question, Jonathan. In my role, I provide constant daily support via multiple platforms. So we're talking about text, calls, emails, virtual and in-person meetings. I believe that these make my students feel supported both emotionally and academically. I also help my students reach their academic and career benchmarks for success, to stay enrolled, to complete their college education through these modes. I answer simple questions ranging from how do I sign into CUNY first to more challenging questions such as what career field do I go into? I often find that the challenging questions are mostly asked from students who are first generation and come from low income backgrounds. I think of one particular example that stands out for me. I had a student who I helped that was really not acclimating to college life well. She was feeling very unsupported, really lost, and unfortunately, really ready to drop out of college. But I spent months checking in with her and cheering her on, being someone she could lean on, and helping her find her direction at Queens College. And actually, funnily enough, I've actually just recently been in a class with her, and she's ready to graduate now and ready to pursue a master's degree. This is one example of why I cherish this work and why I feel like this work is so important, because we as a team here at Queens really strives to help students who are struggling to keep them here.
Selena, I love that. I really appreciate your response there and just the direct delivery of the program. Rebecca, I'm looking at you over here. What are some of the main things your program does to ensure that peer leaders like Selena are positioned to supplement existing advising at the college level?
Absolutely. Thank you, Jonathan. Yeah, to piggyback off of much of what Selena has mentioned here, one of the main ways our program ensures that peer leaders are positioned to supplement our existing advising is by incorporating our peer leaders into our new student onboarding process, as well as throughout their first year experience. So during our new student onboarding phase, peer leaders engage in a proactive outreach via various modalities, as Selena has highlighted. The peers also provide support and guidance to new students on their next steps. So before and after they meet with a professional academic advisor. So this includes ensuring students make appointments with advisors from their first semester of academic planning and registration, right? Ensuring that we retain these students that apply to the institution and that are in the pipeline and need assistance with that next step in onboarding, to assisting students post-advising sessions for help that they may need with schedule changes, procurement of accounts, just general inquiries, and that overall transition to college life. So this proactive approach, I believe, really helps students feel welcomed and supported from the very beginning of their college journey. Peer advisors also serve new students, as Selena mentioned, as freshmen and transfers throughout their first year in a cohort model. So this provides personalized continued support. Our peer advisors, I believe, are an extension of the advising team. They complement the meaningful work of professional academic advisors, and they often bridge the gap between the formal advising sessions, offering ongoing encouragement and support, and serve as a familiar resource for their peers.
Thank you, Rebecca. And Laura, I'm going to ask a similar question as you're also at Queens College. How have you seen peer-to-peer advising programs expand the capacity to better support students through college at the campus level?
Absolutely. The work that Rebecca and Selena are speaking of were initially taking place during the first 2 years of our program were taking place during the pandemic. So 100% online. So the support initially wasn't as high touch. However, when we transitioned back to an in-person experience, our services then were viable for students in that modality as well. We were also able to procure a peer advisement space, and space is at a premium, especially at Queens College. And so those high-touch interactions, the students would know where to go and have those high-touch interactions, and they've increased exponentially. So the ability for students to know that there is a place to which they can go, and it's through walk-in services as well as by appointment, has been very, very helpful. And it's also a space that's geographically located adjacent to the advising center. So that synergy has been extremely helpful to have this integrated work. And the work of the Connect peers, those who focus on our freshmen, have supplemented and enhanced the efforts of our QCN4 program. And this is our 4-year graduation guarantee program. It was launched in fall of 2017. And it's at scale for all incoming first-time, full-time freshmen, with the idea of increasing and improving retention and graduation rates. And the help of the peers have ensured that we're able to assign our incoming freshmen in QCN4 based on a cohort model aligned with meta major. So this organization between the peer work and the professional work of academic advisors has allowed for us to expand our capacity, expand our touch points for our new students. And the arrangement has continued with transfers as well. And so the high fidelity structure of the Academic Advising Center, we work with all undergraduate students who are not affiliated with special programs, as mentioned earlier. And it's a proactive relational and continuous model. And without the peers being able to supplement the work, we would not be able to sustain this and actually extend into a larger population. As Lori had mentioned earlier, we started off with just over 300 students, and now we're over 1,000 students participating in our freshman program.
And yeah, it's certainly kudos to the scale and the implementation and holding the model to fidelity. I want to put a pin in that. I know we're going to come back to that in a little bit. But we know that higher education is placing more of an emphasis on ensuring students graduate prepared for career success. They want to provide meaningful internships and career exploration. However, as you all just explained, there's not a lot of resources at public colleges to do this. So the question that I want to frame this with in this next set is, how do peer-to-peer advising programs help to realize this vision? And Selena, I'm going to start off with you. How has being a peer advisor prepared you for the next steps? And how did it impact your college experience and your career pathway?
Thank you so much, Jonathan, for that question. Being a peer advisor has actually prepared me to go into mental health counseling. This position taught me patience, emotional understanding, and the interpersonal skills really needed for my future career. This position has also given me the structure and skill set to expand my academic and career opportunities. Most notable, this experience has made me cultivate and give me the chance to cultivate an excellent relationship with my peer program supervisor. She has mentored me and helped me apply to QC programs, internships, specializing in mental health counseling, CUNY grad school by writing letters of recommendation for me, giving me application advice, and overall just providing me with the structural support I needed to grow both academically and professionally, which I will cherish and has truly given me a skill set to jump off to the next phase of my academic and career.
That's very encouraging. Thank you, Selena. Lori, we're looking at ARA. How does ARA's structure and their training and the model enable peer advisors to get the career development that they need?
Thanks. I love following Selena because I feel like she just really captured what Cara has hoped for with our training and our model. My answer to your question, Jonathan, really goes back to several of those 5 core components that I just talked about for best practice programs. So first of all, Cara, for the continuous and comprehensive training, Cara provides 70 hours of training to our peer advisors. And that training is designed around a set of core competencies and career capacities that we developed in consultation with professionals in the field. So they are aligned to what really any advisor or counselor needs to know and be able to do this job well. Our peer leaders, our peer advisors, are trained in everything from counseling and communication skills to managing financial aid, to navigating campus portals, to figuring out what to do if a student has a hold, what type of hold it is, et cetera, et cetera. They are trained around a set of benchmarks that they use. Training is also designed to be interactive. It uses a case study approach to make sure that when peer advisors hit the ground, they have had the practice ahead of actually working with their students in their caseload. Our model also emphasizes what Selena emphasized, which is the importance of a supervisor and a really good supervisor. This means that there is a trained professional meeting with peer advisors on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, overseeing their work, providing them feedback, and essentially giving them continual professional development. So it's not just the formal training sessions they go to, but it is the ongoing support. Finally, Cara has developed an assessment system that both ensures that peer advisors have the skills and knowledge that they need to effectively do their job, and that they have structured opportunities to reflect on their performance and get formal feedback. We see this as the kind of a precursor to the kind of evaluation that folks get when they are full-time in the field, or at least should get. So these structures are really ensuring that the peer advisor experience aligns to best practice internships and really operates as an apprenticeship.
Thank you, Lori. I think you really said a lot there, and I think you might have already answered a little bit of what my next question to Rebecca is going to be. But Rebecca, I'm looking at your square here. What value add do you see the colleges hiring former uh, peer advisors to full-time roles? And if we don't mind speaking to what the benefits that would be for your department and your colleagues.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jonathan. So I certainly believe there's a tremendous value for colleges to hire former peer advisors into full-time positions. I believe it accelerates the training process, and it certainly preserves the valuable institutional knowledge from a student's perspective. So as we know, hiring, training, onboarding can be a heavy lift and could be also challenging with the limited resources. So by leveraging the extensive experience that peers like Selena and others in her role have acquired throughout their undergraduate careers, these individuals seamlessly integrate into the teams and can often, as Lori has mentioned, like hit the ground running. And so that's what we hope for, and for that continuous advancement and training and learning throughout their careers, excuse me. So I'm incredibly passionate about this line of work and providing job opportunities for students and peer advisors. So I'll share that during my undergraduate career many years ago, I served as a peer advisor, and I had the opportunity to work in various offices on campus. So the experiences and extensive trainings that I had access to as an undergraduate student then were invaluable to me and provided me with that pipeline of opportunity to transition into my career now today in higher education administration. So I truly feel that is where my passion for this work was truly ignited. I believe hiring former peer advisors is not only advantageous to the college, but it's also essential. It's especially in the ever-changing landscape of higher education.
Rebecca, I appreciate your response and also the personal touch. And you're certainly making me reflect on when I was a peer advisor at my alma mater as well. So it's really awesome to see the trajectory and the career pathways that all led us back to this wonderful space we call post-secondary student success in higher education. So thank you for that response. Laura, I'm curious to know how you have made this model work at Queens College, and specifically, like, what resources have you drawn on and what challenges have you faced at the institutional level to make this possible?
Certainly, the training resources are invaluable, as Rebecca was saying, the changing environment and landscape of higher education. And what that translates into for academic advisors is a fire hose of information that they must consistently synthesize and utilize and put forth in working with students. And with that ever-changing and ever-evolving curriculum and changing processes, it requires consistent communication and training to ensure that professional advisors and peers are apprised of the information so that they can guide their students. And with that said, the work that we do in collaboration with CARA is absolutely invaluable. So we have that resource, we have the resource internally of our own team who mentor the peers, and we learn from the peers. They have that visceral experience of being students at the institution. We're looking at things from a very differing lens as administrators, and the peers are the experiential component. So there's much that we learn from them as well. So the synergy is necessary and fantastic. And we built our workforce from our peers and from past part-time advisors. And so I just see this continued pipeline, not just in Queens College, but in CUNY. And that has been invaluable, making sure that, you know, we are providing this opportunity and also assuring that the folks on our team are well-versed and well-trained. And so creating that sustainable and layered workforce, because prior to us launching our peer programs, we were really, like many advising offices, a flat structure where it's professional advisors and that's it. And so not initially having that support for peers was really, really challenging, because our professional advisors would have to ensure that we're handling the volume of students, especially when it was new student period time, concurrent to working with our continuing students. And there's only so much volume that a professional staff can handle. And so this supplement has been very, very helpful. And the peers are able to cover more broad-based information, some of the transactional elements of degree navigation. And that's allowed our professional advising team to allot some of their time and expert knowledge for some more in-depth and complex student needs. We have students who are re-entering from many years ago and students who have differing needs. And so to be able to best manage and appropriate our staff so that we're utilizing the resources in the best way possible has been very, very helpful to ensure that we have full year coverage for our incoming and our continuing students.
Laura, I thank you for that context, and you know, kind of signals to my next question, because the work that you all are doing is really unique because it's working to institutionalize peer advisors as a fundamental part of student support, and y'all are doing this work at scale. So Laura, you know, as you talked about the challenges in navigating Queens College, what are some of the mindsets needed, or the mindsets that are also needed to be changed at your institution to really take this on?
Yeah, absolutely. With some of the mindsets that I think our academic advising is challenged by is perhaps a lack of understanding that academic advising is more than course registration. Sometimes we're boiled down to the most, you know, basic of element, and it's so much more than that. And advising in and of itself, you know, although helpful toward enrollment goals, isn't the panacea, and you know, it's not, you know, the only game in town as far as supporting students and supporting the college's goals concurrently. It's individualized student engagement, and it's not one size fits all. And so the business model, which sometimes advising is thought of, is the, you know, all things to all people at all times. It's very challenging, and it's really not an effective business model. Freshman needs vary from transfers vary from re-entries, specialized populations, including those registered with disability services, international students, scholar athletes. I could go on and on as far as the differing needs of our student population. They're all unique and they are particular. And so it is necessary to properly recognize and resource campus advisement. And one way to do this is creating that layered and multi-pronged approach to student support. And the peers allow for that. It's relatively low-cost stratification, and that student support is absolutely necessary and really effective when it comes to meeting retention and graduation goals. And it's to extend the limited resources that ultimately do challenge, especially public institutions.
I think you mentioned something that was really that really hit it on the nose, about the diversification of the support, to be able to meet the needs of all the students that are at your institution. So, you know, in that vein, if we're talking about scale to be able to support these students, Lori, how has CARA addressed potential challenges to scaling, specifically maintaining quality and consistency? Like, how do you approach partnership development and also hold fidelity at the forefront of the work?
I'm going to answer that question, but first, I just want to pick up on one thing that Laura said, because it just struck me, and I just want to name it. Laura talked about a fire hose of information that comes at advisors. And I think it's important for us all to realize that that fire hose also comes at students. And often it comes at students in not differentiated ways because campuses can't do that with their limited resources. And it's such a good analogy, and it's such a good, I don't like the term trickle down, but it is a trickle down effect of what happens to students when all of this information is coming at them and they don't know what to do about it. And what we hear from students is they just stop paying attention. But when they have peer advisors like Selena, who force them to pay attention to the things that matter to them, they start paying attention. And that's where you see the capacity expanding. Okay, now I'll go to your question. I'm sorry about that. So how do we maintain fidelity? So when CARA first developed our peer-to-peer persistence model, we actually implemented it in smaller settings, in boutique programs, I would say. So more specialized programs like opportunity programs, ASAP, the Black Male Initiative, among others, adding a layer of peer-to-peer advising there. Because even though they have good ratios, they still thought that they needed more and that there was a power in doing it this way. Through that work, we developed an implementation rubric that laid out what needs to happen to move the needle on persistence through a peer-to-peer approach. You can actually find the rubric on our website, but the broad categories include building peer advisor development and support, so things like training and supervision, expanding individual support through enough peer advisors and one-on-one interactions, ensuring there is time and space for that, integrating peer advisors into campus and program infrastructure, and the rubric also tracked short and longer term outcomes so that we could do data analysis. As we have scaled the model, we've held these same practices and the rubric at the core of our work. At the same time, we have seen how much more complex it is to do it at scale, especially in under-resourced campuses. So we've identified 3 components that really need to be in place to ensure effective implementation. One, and I think Queens College is such a good example of this, is that the program needs to be purposefully integrated into the college's student support infrastructure and strategic plan. So Laura talked a lot about how the peer advisors are completely integrated into the school's advising approach and is part of the QC&4 initiative. That's the kind of landing place that this model needs. It can't just be in an office off to the side. Second, and related, it needs to be well known and supported by all levels of campus leadership across different divisions. The challenges that students face are not just what happens in the bursar or what happens in financial aid or what happens at the registrar or what happens with an academic advisor. They experience this as holistic. The peer advisors work with them to address it in a holistic manner, and therefore the model needs to be understood across divisions. And third, for sustainability, campuses must secure a range of resources and build them into their long-term plans.
That's I think I'm hoping that we'll be able to make these slides, and I'm really glad that this is recorded because a lot of really great nuggets here. So I appreciate that. Before we open it up for Q&A, we'll do some rapid fire questions. And so, in rapid fire, I mean, we're going to keep the responses to about 30 seconds or less. And so we'll start off with Selena, then we'll go to Laura, Rebecca, and then we'll end off with you, Lori, okay? So the question I want to pose to you all, kicking things off with you, Selena, first is, what are the greatest challenges to the work?
Thanks, Jonathan. Since peer advisors are students too, we understand our students' frustration, and because of that, we go above and beyond for them, but we can only do so much. In general, there's a lack of resources for students, and the departments that are available to help are often understaffed and overworked. So I would say the greatest challenges is dealing with lack of resources. That would be the biggest challenge.
Yeah, on that note, since the inception of our 2 peer mentoring programs, we have drawn on a range of funding sources to pay the peer leaders. And while indeed we're appreciative of the support, we found that the patchwork quilt, if you will, of grant and tax levy funding sources, different rules, different timelines, different onboarding, students who can work during summers and winters, which tend to be the busy onboarding periods, students who cannot. So that is a bit of a challenge. And so trying to figure out how to pull all of this together in alignment so that we have continuous coverage and ensuring that both our students are served as well as our peers will have their positions throughout the duration of the academic year. So that we've made great strides toward, but want to continue to do so.
Great. I would say the greatest challenge to this work is ensuring the longevity of the program. So continued partnership with the institution and grant support is essential for sustaining this model and ensuring ongoing support for peer-to-peer advising initiatives, such as our program and others.
So ditto to all. I think I would just add in that peer-to-peer advising is not something that can happen on its own. It needs to be a part of a larger restructuring and resourcing, or better resourcing, of public higher education that is focused on equity. This is really challenging, and at the same time, given the resources that are appropriately going into helping students to get to college, it's imperative that we ensure that college campuses are ready for students once they arrive. And if we can do this, I believe the return on investment will be immeasurable.
I love that. I love that. And our last rapid fire question, I'll pose to the group. And again, we're also taking some questions in the chat, so feel free to go ahead and use that Q&A. We'll open it up for a short Q&A after this last rapid fire question. And so in the same order, we'll start off with you, Selena. What would you say to someone in leadership, either within your campus, within the system or outside of it, about the next steps for peer-to-peer post-secondary advising?
Amazing question. Honestly, my main desire for a team is to create a more significant campus presence, which requires a bigger office and space to accommodate our expanding number of students. I often feel that since Queens College is a school with a high commuter population, many of our students often say that they feel removed from the community that the institution has to offer. And we've seen that when we're able to connect with students in person, they are able to thrive way more. So with a bigger space, we can strengthen and bolster the feelings of community amongst the students we help. And that in turn will help them matriculate even more.
Indeed, a campus presence, very, very important, and recognizing the work and how important it actually is. At the same time, we've talked about the need for resources, but I guess for me, the importance initially is an internal review of your support services. What programs and services already exist? Who are your peer? Who is your peer workforce? Who are the students who are already performing action on your campus? To make sure that you're working toward tying these things together and alleviating repetition and duplicative efforts that can dot an institution, and a more centralized presence. And that's what we're trying to do with our program, is to engage other programs that build themselves as peer programs and peer support to pull it together so that we are sharing the same training resources. We're sharing a lot of the financial resources to make sure that we can be sustained past the initial point of inception of the program. So I would say really doing an initial, a very deliberate review and initial emphasis on your peer programs and what does already exist.
Great. So I will add that if we're speaking to someone within leadership, that to advance peer-to-peer post-secondary advising, streamlining and institutionalizing campus peer programs is key, as well as incentivizing participation both academically and financially. I believe this will allow for the sustainability of programs such as ours and will foster a culture where peer advising is not only valued, but it is rewarded.
I would say three things. One, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We need to build upon what exists. You've seen it here. It exists. We can scale best practice models. They're out there. Number two, we need to ensure adequate, reliable, and usable funding for peer advisor pay. It is the biggest barrier, and it is critical to the model. And three, we should formalize a career pipeline such that students like Selena, who complete a certain number of training hours and a certain number of work hours, can translate that experience into job security, advanced salary steps, priority hiring, and/or graduate school tuition remission.
So thank you. I appreciate you all for all your responses. We did get some questions in the chat. Going to take those for the next couple of minutes here. Yeah, I'm just going to open it up to everyone. Anybody feel free to respond. But first question that we got was, how are peer advisors paid competitively? Is through private funds, is it work study? Could y'all explain a little bit more about the funding model for the peer advisor salaries?
Laura, do you want to start, or why don't you
Sure.
start and I can
Yeah,
follow up?
certainly, certainly. So for our two programs right now, we are grant funded. So the students are predominantly grant funded. So they are receiving funding in that way. We also have some tax levy funds. And that's what I spoke of earlier, the kind of the patchwork quilt of putting together funds, you know, kind of the differing rules. But we do wish to expand and look into how we can incorporate those students who receive federal work study in other mechanisms. CUNY also has programs. CUNY Launch is one. We've engaged those students. So students who are receiving funds through other program initiatives, we are also engaging them, and they'll be joining us this summer, for example. So we're trying to pull, like I said before, we're trying to pull all of these experiences together so that we are rowing in the same direction.
I would just pop out that the federal work study is a source that everybody would like to be able to use more smoothly. And there are just challenges to piecing it together. But I think and there are some barriers. Federal work, we've had moments where federal work study offices have said that job is too complicated for federal work study. And so we need to really think differently about how federal work study funds are used. There is some movement out there that is trying to redefine some of the policies around federal work study to make it more usable for things like that, like this, and that would be a really good policy push.
Great, great. And now, there's certainly the financial incentive, which might mitigate and address, this next question. But in the Q&A, it was put, how do you stabilize a program in light of turnover in students, either experienced through completion or just natural attrition? Can you explain a little bit more about how do you retain the peer advisors for the program? And Laura, I'll look at your square here.
With retaining our students, our peer advisors, we're looking for students ideally who are around sophomore to early junior. And we're also encouraging students once they graduate. I mean, Selena's been with us. She's our longest running peer, to move into higher levels of management. So in Selena's case, she moved from a peer leader to a peer coordinator. So we've tried to create a varying structure for opportunity for our peers. We also have some peers who have graduated and moved on to graduate school. And so we encourage them to stick around and work with us as graduate students. So we try to keep that, kind of that trajectory going until they move on past us. But we've been, in the 4 years that we're doing this, we've been very lucky to retain many of our peers who started with us as sophomores or juniors.
Yeah, I would love to add on to what Laura just mentioned. I actually started this position my first year of college. I was a baby freshman. And the number one thing that I will say about this position, it teaches you a lot about your institution. So it's actually a learning opportunity for the peer advisors themselves. With everyone on my team, the number one common thing that we will say is that this position is a learning opportunity for us as well. It's helped us understand our institution more. So that's why it's fitting for, we've had a range of freshman, sophomore, junior, senior onwards, because in each of those categories, you learn so much more about your institution.
I love it. Thank you all. We're going to transition and continue on with the presentation. Really appreciate all of the Q&A. Feel free, I see the chat is firing off and y'all are going back and forth. So I encourage the discussion in the chat. And we'll also have a slide up where you can contact the panelists after the presentation. If you have any more burning questions, anything that feels unresolved, panelists make themselves available to be able to answer those questions and provide a little bit more context that you're looking for. Great. So we're going to transition just a little bit to just some considerations for the funder community. I know there's a blended group on the call here. And so I know some of this information may be reticent more with funders, but I think it could really be used with everyone. But before moving on, I just want to express the gratitude to Lori, Laura, Rebecca, and Selena for your insights. It's always great to provide some visibility behind the nuance and strategy and just how programs like these are implemented on campuses and what it all takes to really pull it off. And so, like I said, I'm gonna spend a couple more minutes here to talk about, Cara's model and just really models like these in general. And when we look at Cara's model and the work with CUNY, as well as the work that they're doing in Washington, what's impressive is not only that they're able to show impact, but that they're able to do so at scale. And what we're really seeing is a direct service model being scaled for widespread and systemic impact. And so the folks over at Bellwether, my dear colleague, Alex Cortez, and the team who did Cara's strategic plan have an excellent playbook that gives some framing for how programs like these are scaled. And to lay the groundwork, I just have the slide here. Many organizations, they often wrestle with ways they want to close or even eliminate the gap between what they're doing in the direct service model and their ultimate vision. And so, I want to note that there are several organizations who are doing good work, really particularly on the left side of this arrow. And it's important. And if we're looking to do the greatest good for the greatest number of students, we really should be looking towards those programs that are employing the range of strategies to help them achieve their overall vision of making sure that the systems in place are able to hold these programs sustainable. Next slide, please. So there's a lot of information there on the slide, but essentially, most nonprofits start off as direct impact, and this makes sense. They're closest to the work, and some organizations just focus on scaling direct impact, and there's nothing wrong with that. But also, direct impact can have its limitations. There's direct impact fatigue, and so in an effort to be able to scale and reach more students, it's increasingly leading more organizations to think about scaling through widespread impact and systemic impact as well. These organizations are looking to work alongside institutions like Cara is doing with CUNY and specifically Queens College to implement elements of their model and train those individuals and secure additional resource flows so that this program can be sustainable at their organizations. Next slide, please. So we have this just laid out here a little bit differently, but essentially as we consider different approaches, Bellwether offers up that nonprofits like Cara can employ 3 different strategies to address both the needs at the moment and also long-term transformation in education. Next slide, please. So my charge to the funding community here and those of us on the call, as we consider funding and navigating and partnering with organizations like Cara, understand the true resource constraints and fund that, right? Lori has done a really great job, as well as Laura and Rebecca and Selena, elevating the constraints as it relates to money, time, talent, et cetera. Track the actual execution against the program design. Bellwether offered up a really great framework to look at this model through. There are certainly others, but understanding how the program is being designed and what their impact is, you're able to see what's working and what's not. Invest in research and evaluation. We know what works, but we're not quite sure how it works in different settings. And so making sure that you're evaluating the program as it's scaled to understand its impact and role in different settings is key. Also, second to last one, I want to make sure is supporting the enhancements of data technology infrastructure. This isn't the most attractive thing to fund for funders, but allows programs to work efficiently and to be able to get the scale and impact that we're all looking for. And the last part is no right answer. but be clear with your answer and flexible with measures. As best as we can be clear with our partners, grantees, and applicants, and understanding what we're looking for and what impact we're looking to have, and also being flexible about how they're measuring that, the more we'll see an agile progression towards closing those gaps that we've spoke about earlier on in the webinar. Next slide, please. And so want to express the gratitude again to ed funders, panelists here. This doesn't happen in a vacuum, as Lori has mentioned, and really want to lift up the resources here. There's a QR code here that you all can scan that takes you to a link with the Triple Impact Report. There'll be CMC Foundation's North Star and a host of other resources that you can dive into specifically answer your questions. And I encourage you to reach out to the panelists if you have burning questions. Thank you all very much for joining in this webinar, this inaugural webinar for the PSA2. I look forward to seeing you all in future ones.